Excellent. So, summer series, we can tell it's summer series because like for every chair that's filled, there's 4 that aren't. And that's just this time of year. This summer series we're doing, it's kind of out of series. We're not given a topic to speak on, which is kind of a blessing because it's like leaves us free to kind of explore a few things, but also a bit of a nightmare if you're like me and my thinking just goes bang, 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 all over the place. And I'm like, I've got 75 different things. Thanks, Ollie. I've got 75 different things to say. Don't worry, I've narrowed it down. 74.5. 75 different things to say, and it's like, how do we narrow all this down? So, guys, buckle up, settle in, because, for the next hour and a half, I'm going to see how far I get through those 75 points. No, I'm not going to do that. I wouldn't do that. I would hate to be in that sermon. But today I'm going to talk about something I've been involved with since I have been in church, and that thing is worship. When I first came into church, the first thing that kind of, apart from the amazing people like Richard Cobb and all those guys, because that's the first thing that got me hooked, and Sunday lunch at his house, wow, never eaten so well in my life, and it hasn't stopped since. Okay, it was amazing. But apart from that, the first thing I got involved with was worship. I had this little terrible drum kit at Emmanuel Christian Centre in the day. And I couldn't play, but I had to go. And they kept bearing with me. And we got involved in worship. I've been involved in worship in some way, shape, or form in lots of different contexts ever since. Okay, so we're going to share a little bit about that this morning. But before that, a bit of a story about worship. And if you're in our team here, ably led by Ollie and Phil, you may have heard this before, but I don't apologise. I never apologise. That's not true, sorry. I once played at a conference. AOG used to kind of get together every year and book out a holiday camp. Like, it was usually somewhere like Prestatyn. Yeah, somewhere like really glamorous. Real Prestatyn. Somewhere like that. So I used to go, and the first year I went, I was just there as a kind of just to go to the conference. And my friend was leading worship, and the percussionist didn't turn up, slacker. And he said, do you want to join us for it? Because I was just sat there watching the band going, these guys are amazing. Watching their rehearsal, because that's how geeky I am. Just sat there watching rehearsal. The guy said, hey, do you want to join us for rehearsal? I'm like, yeah, cool, I can hit things. That's cool. So he let me hit things. And then he said at the end of the night, do you want to play tonight? I'm like, what? And I think there's probably about 3,000 people in this auditorium. I'm like, yeah, we'll go. And then I played kind of every year for the next 7 years. And I moved from percussion to kit and all that kind of stuff. And it was amazing. But one year, I was so involved in the worship, I just forgot where I was. And when you're playing in a big venue like that, about most of the time, I don't need my drum kit miking up. You've heard me, right? I don't need it miking up, right? So, but when you're playing in a big venue like that, you've got microphones everywhere, flipping everywhere. And once I had this guy from God TV with a camera focusing in on myself, and I almost smashed his lens. Like, get out of my way. But there's microphones everywhere, and I'm playing, and I'm getting excited, and I'm singing. Who knows? That's not a good thing. Mr. Brompton doesn't sing. Okay, so I'm singing, and then on the way back home, we're listening to the recording, because you've been to these events, right, where they record the worship, and they knock it out for about £3.50 at the end of the week on a really bad CD. Do you remember those days? All right? Or cassette. All right, I'm not old. Thanks, Sal. So I was always there to remind me. So on a cassette for £3.50, and we stuck it in the cassette, or the CD, I can't remember which one, in the van on the way home. And me and my friend Nick were driving home, and we're listening to the worship. I'm like, oh, that bit's really cool. Can you hear that? Oh, that bit's really good. That bass line there is amazing. That key part is awesome. And we're picking it to pieces, and we're going like, ooh, those backing vocals are well off. What is that awful sound? And I'm sat the rest of the way home thinking, that was me. the mics have picked me up as I was just kind of going for it in worship, and I'm going crazy, and I'm going for it, and I'm singing top of my voice, and the microphones picked me up and absolutely ruined the whole recording. I did tell him eventually, but it took me a while. I was so embarrassed. It's like a 2.5-hour drive home, not saying a word about that terrible, terrible sound. You'll be pleased to know that our worship isn't just about sung stuff that we do in church. Don't we have an incredible team here? Come on, agree. I'm not here to brainwash you. I'm here to reveal the truth. We have an incredible team, don't we? Ably led by Ollie and Phil and some incredible people on our team. They are amazing. A true blessing to work with. I've worked with a lot of worship teams, but these guys are really awesome to work with. But I've been around church long enough now to realize that worship is not about what we sing. Worship is not about a crazy dance. It might be. Worship is not about a tambourine. Oh, no tambourine. Worship is not about flag waving. And don't be offended. All it's got its place. It's all cool, I think. I'll bring a flag next week. We'll find out. Hey, all right. All of those things are brilliant, but that's not all worship is about. Who knows that? Who knows that? Only 3 of us. Now, maybe it's just me, but sometimes I come into church on a Sunday, and it's not all about those things, but we're going to start there and kind of extrapolate out. Is that okay? Okay, because that's kind of our joint understanding at the moment. So, I don't know about you, but sometimes I'll come into church on a Sunday morning, and we've usually had a Costa on the way, because it's important to get good coffee, all right? And we only go there. It's not an advert for Costa. It's how it works, so we just get a discount. Happy days. Sometimes, if we're pushing the boat out, bacon butty from Greg's next door. Great way to start a Sunday morning if you've not done it, all right? But if you're here for worship team, it's not opening time. So I can't do it all the time. Okay, so we'll do that, and kind of we're driving on the way. And who knows, sometimes, when you live with people, you don't always, 100% of the time, get on all the time, yeah? I know. As easy as Sal is to live with. I'm not saying anything about me, okay? Sometimes there's a little bit of friction in the car, maybe. Why haven't you blown that tyre up yet? Or why can't you sort my bike out? Or whatever is going on. And we walk into church, and we get, if you haven't been to Costa before, we go grab a coffee at the back, and we chat to our friends, which is a good thing. We talk to our friends, we have a catch-up, we go, hey, how's your week been? I even asked the same thing this morning. And then we get to the 5-minute warning, and we ignore it, mostly, because it's just some guy talking on the stage for a bit, like this. Just some guy talking on the stage for a bit. So we ignore that, and then we go for a safety wee, because we know the service is just about to start. You don't want to be walking around to the back in front of the camera and stuff halfway through the meeting. You don't want to be doing that. I don't. So I always go for a safety wee. And then by the second song in, I'm ready. Who's been there? Second song in, come on. First song in, my head's still trying to kind of sort out what's going on. Everything's been kind of such a rush. I'm thinking about what that person said, an email I've just got. Even this morning, my wife's like, oh, why are you checking your work emails? And all that kind of stuff. So we've got all this stuff going on. And actually, God really challenged me this last week on kind of making sure that I'm prepared for worship. Prepared for worship. We're moving into worship. But what is worship if it's not just singing? Romans 12:1 says this, therefore I urge you, brothers and sisters, in view of God's mercy, to offer your bodies as a living sacrifice, holy and pleasing to God. This is your true and proper worship. Do not conform. We're not going to talk too much about this today, but I love this. Do not conform to the pattern of this world, but be transformed by the renewing of your mind. Who knows, science is finally catching up with us. Then you will be able to test and approve that God's will is his good, pleasing, and perfect will. Another area we can test. We can test his will. We can do that. That's okay. Therefore, and that's the bit we're going to kind of concentrate this morning. Therefore, I urge you, brothers and sisters, in view of God's mercy, to offer your bodies as a living sacrifice, holy and pleasing to God. Absolutely incredible. Who's writing that? Paul is writing that, my favorite writer of the Bible. The guy is incredible. Paul's been through everything, seen everything, been everywhere, done everything. He is my absolute hero. So it's Paul speaking to the believers in Rome, hence it's Romans. So it's not written to a massive church in Rome. It's kind of sent around lots of different groups of people who meet in homes in Rome. First thing I want us to notice this morning, therefore I urge you, brothers and sisters. Brothers and sisters. You might, what's that got to do with worship? Let me explain. Worship is something we do, but it's also something we do. Brothers and sisters. Now you need to remember that Paul is writing to the church in Rome. Now the church in Rome is made up of Jews and Gentiles. So he's really talking to all believers. Remember also about Rome is that there would have been slaves and free. So he was talking to Jews, he was talking to Gentiles, he was talking to slaves, and he was talking to free people. I urge you. It doesn't just say, can I just say? Can I just kind of remind you? No, it's a response in view of God's mercy. Our worship is a response. Our worship is a response. The Old Testament, and under what we term the Old Covenant, was a strange way to worship. Man, I'm glad we don't have to do that anymore. Just imagine the scene. Sunday morning, and all of that kind of corridor outside is piled up with baskets of doves and maybe some bulls and some goats, and you've got to bring them in, and you give them to Sam and Dom, and they kill them and cook them. Then they take all the fur off and that, because they're the priests, so they can keep all the furs and stuff, because that was kind of part of the payment for being that. And did you know historians reckon that on one very busy day in the temple, up to 1.2 million animals were slaughtered. 1.2 million. We have this weird thing about sacrifice. We think, oh, it's just a little dove on the altar. No. Can I swear? It was a bloody mess. It was a bloody mess. It would have been everywhere. It would have looked like a scene from movies you should not be watching. It would be awful. It would be terrible. This wasn't a clean thing. We've sanitized it in our minds. We read it in a little book. Oh, sacrifice in the temple. Oh, it must have been difficult. But no, it was horrific. Aren't you glad we don't have to do that today? I'm so glad I don't. I'm squeamish. I hate birds. Can I just tell you? Like, I don't just hate them. I'm scared of them. Like, properly, because there's, what I don't know what they're going to do. They're just, spiders, nah. Mice and rats, whatever. Birds, can't stand them. So I'd be stood outside still. I'm not walking through those baskets. Not going to happen. Give me the ball, give me the goat. No worries. I ain't walking through no birds. It's not going to happen. But I'm so glad that we don't have to do that today. We don't have to do that today because Jesus paid the ultimate price. Jesus paid that sacrifice. And worth more than 1.2 million animals. He made that sacrifice for you and for me so that we could have a relationship with God, so that we can truly and properly worship. Just a couple of things on worship now. And this might challenge some of you. It challenged me. Okay, that is the point. Okay, hopefully you'll feel encouraged by the end of today. That would be great. But hopefully you'll have something you've gone away with that's been a bit of a challenge. Worship has never and will never be about you. Sorry to break that to you. Worship has never and will never be about you. The amount of times I've sat behind a drum kit, played a song, I thought, oh my word, It's the fourth time we've done this song today. We've played this song 1 billion trillion times, but it's not about me. The amount of times I've been in a congregation, I'm thinking, oh, that guitarist really needs to tune his guitar. Because this is the kind of thing us worship guys do. I'm sorry to break it to you, we do. Okay, we really need to get over ourselves a little bit, but this is a real thing. What's going on with that track? What's going on with that track? They can't be playing with a click. They can't play with the click. And you'll be picking these things, but it's just in our heads, and we can't kind of get to the bit where we're actually supposed to be worshiping. It's really, really difficult because we like to analyze things, but it's not about me. It's not even about my preference. So I work for the Church of England, okay? I work for the Church of England. I'm a chaplain for those guys working in education, and I love it. It's absolutely phenomenal. But one thing I've learned working for the Church of England, that there is no one style of worship. I'm still talking about song worship for the moment. There is no one style of worship that is right. Jesus says to worship in spirit and in truth. That's the right kind of worship. Whether that means that somebody's playing an organ, or whether that means somebody with an acoustic guitar and a cajon, or whether we've got an orchestra, doesn't matter. We worship in spirit and in truth. We worship in spirit and truth because of what Jesus has done. It's our response. And to paraphrase Paul, it just makes sense. Doesn't it? So the fact that we don't have to come in every week and make these weird, horrible sacrifices, the fact that Jesus has died for you and for me so that we can be reconnected with God, it just makes sense. As human beings, I was reading an article this week. I like to read articles. As human beings, excuse me a moment, as human beings, we need water. True story. As human beings, we are hardwired to worship. We are hardwired to worship. Our problem is we're usually, not always, we're usually worshiping the wrong stuff. We're usually worshiping the wrong stuff. So I was reading this particular article, and it was why kids seem to connect easier with God than adults. And it wasn't in a Christian publication. It was in a national newspaper. It wasn't the Daily Mirror. It was a good one. Okay. So it was in a national paper, and it was based on proper scientific research. And it was saying that kids are hardwired to accept that there is something greater than themselves. They don't see one of the things they gave that they didn't see a river as a geographical kind of thing. They thought, oh, that's a great place for fishing. That's a great place for swimming. They didn't see a bird as it kind of how it fitted into the food chain. They saw a bird and they, isn't that beautiful? Pointing to a creator. And all of those things are true. Rivers are geographical things, and our birds play their part in the food chain, etc. But there's a much greater meaning behind all of those things. And children kind of get that. And as adults, we sometimes lose our whole perspective on that because we love to overcomplicate. So worship will never be about you. Worship is about glorifying God, giving thanks and praise to Him with our voices, but hopefully matching that with our lifestyle. The moment we make it about us is the moment it ceases to be worship. So you've all heard the phrase, right? Who's heard the phrase? Worship is a lifestyle. Anyone heard that? Right, let's play audience participation. Put your hands up if you've heard the phrase, worship is a lifestyle. Tell me what it means. It's a rubbish phrase. It's a terrible phrase. And it's a terrible phrase because people don't really go on to explain it very well. And listen, there is only one way to have worship as a lifestyle, and it is this: Jesus front and center. There's no other way around it, guys. There's no way around it. If finance is front and center for you, you're worshiping the wrong thing. If your partner is front and center for you, you're worshiping the wrong thing. If your kids don't hear what I'm not saying, please, if your kids are front and center, you're worshipping the wrong thing. All of those things important, some more than others, right? But if Jesus isn't front and center, then we're worshipping. I don't know why I'm doing this. I'm getting all Anglican again. Jesus front and center. There we go. Jesus got to be front and center, otherwise we're worshipping the wrong thing. And then it becomes about us at the end of the day, because we have selfish ambitions for our relationships, because we're not perfect. We all have selfish ambitions about our relationships, don't we? All of us. So it's never about you, and it's never about me. He always, we've talked about this morning, and Ollie, I had to stop Ollie in the kind of the pre-match talk that we have on a Sunday. We like to do a good pre-match talk. I had to stop it. Ollie, shut up now. You've been preaching my message, man. What are you doing? And he gets it all for free. I had to drink loads of flat whites to get that, and prep and everything. He always deserves to be worshipped. Just close your eyes a second. I don't know if you ever see Miranda. Bear with. Bear with. Close your eyes. Imagine that time before you knew Jesus. Imagine that time. Now, hands up. Just keep your eyes closed. Hands up if you remember the day where you thought, I've connected with God. Hands up if you remember that day. Amazing. For some people, it was a more gradual process. That's fine. We remember that day. Can you remember how you felt in that time just after we'd kind of connected or reconnected with God? Can you remember how you felt? I remember how I felt. I kind of got this tingly feeling, like I felt loved, like I would never felt loved before. There's a song there, isn't there? Felt loved like I've never felt loved before. I felt warm. I felt just on top of the world. I felt absolutely amazing. Can you remember back to the time you first worshipped after that? Now, some of you, you know, this was a matter of weeks ago, and for some of you, a few weeks ago. Open your eyes again. Just remember that. Just as we continue with this morning, just remember that. I want you to remember that. I want you to remember just what that was like. You see, Jesus deserves to be worshipped today just as he did that day. The problem is we've put so much in the way, haven't we? We've complicated things. We've made our own kind of selfish ambitions more important than they really should be. We've prioritized different things. Mostly good things as well. I know none of you guys are terrible people, and I hope I'm not. They're all good things. They're all healthy-ish. But we've still put too much in the way. I want you to remember today, Jesus paid the ultimate price for you. He wants all of you. That is worship. Worship isn't this. It is. And even psychologically, did you know when you raise your hands like that, quick fact, lowers cortisol levels, the stress hormone. Did you know that? My wife told me that. She's clever. She graduated this week. That's pretty cool, isn't it? Told you she was clever. Thought I'd get that in somewhere. Lowers cortisol levels. You know when we sing together? When we sing together, it does the same thing. It can lower cortisol levels for stress hormone. But it also, sometimes, if we're in rhythm, or we've got any sense of rhythm whatsoever, right, we can also, our heartbeat can match it. And we all start breathing with the same heartbeat. And we all start lowering our stress. How amazing is that? Physiologically, there are changes that happen in our bodies when we worship. Now, don't get me wrong. They change when we go see Taylor Swift as well. When everyone's there worshiping Taylor Swift. Because you have to worship her to pay that amount of money, right? Cheapest tickets are like $250 or something like that. Madness. Anyway. Absolutely crazy. The same thing happens because God's designed us all for worship. They're just worshiping the wrong thing. Guys, we're designed even physiologically for worship. We're designed to raise our hands in the air. We're designed to dance around. The third thing is, it's not just about you. It's not about you and me at all. God always deserves to be worshipped. And lastly, our worship, as a reminder, is to be of spirit and of truth. You might come in this morning and you feel terrible. Ollie's already shared, he didn't feel well today. His first words to me, "Don't come near me. I'm sick." I'm like, I did my best impression of Princess Diana. Touched him on the shoulder. He's not a leper, it's okay. But his first words, "Don't come near me. I'm sick." He was feeling terrible today. I know of instances, and I will not share, I will share stories, but never names and places. I know of instances where somebody has literally miscarried a child and has to go and lead worship. I can't even think about it without getting emotional. They've miscarried a child and they know it. And they've got to go and lead worship. Now, I'll be honest with you, I would more than happily forgive that person for just getting someone else to do it. Wouldn't we all? A bit of compassion. You see that on the values on the way in, one of the school values. A bit of compassion. But they thought, my God is bigger than my problem. Wow. My God is bigger than my problem. My God is bigger than my circumstance. My God is bigger than my situation, because God is good all the time. And all the time, God is good. That is why he is always truly, truly, truly worthy of all the glory, the honor, and the praise that we can give. I've got 20 million other things to share. I won't bore you. And I realize that that's not an exhaustive thing on everything to do with worship. We could never do that. Not in a week. We need a whole series on it. Tell Dom. Sure, we'll sort that out. But this morning, we're going to go back into a time of sung worship. And do you remember a little while ago, I said, close your eyes. Remember that time that you first came to know Christ, that first time you kind of reconnected with God. I want you to do the same thing. So before we enter into worship again, I want you to stand to our feet if you're able. If you're not, hey, that's cool. Let's stand to our feet. And right at the very beginning of this song, I don't want a warm-up. It's like, oh, we'll do the first verse and then by the chorus, yay. God is worthy of praise at the start of the song. God is worthy of praise at the end of the song. He is the Alpha and the Omega, and we forget everything in between. He's not just the beginning and the end. He's the beginning through to the end. That's who God is. That's the God we worship. Not just the guy in first place and last place, the guy that's through it all, through all of time, through all of history. That is the God that we worship. The God that we worship means we don't have to slaughter animals anymore. The God that we worship means you can have a relationship with him. The God we worship means you can be free from addiction. The God that we worship means you could be free from a relationship that was unhealthy. The God that we worship means that you can be free from the things that go round and round your mind. When we renew our mind, those negative thoughts, those sometimes invasive thoughts that keep coming about, and that's a word for somebody today. Somebody in this room today is experiencing invasive thoughts that are very harmful. I want to tell you today, Jesus can deal with those invasive thoughts. Jesus can deal with those invasive thoughts. It comes at a cost. The cost is this. Getting all Anglican again. Jesus front and center. That's the cost. It's not free. People say salvation is free. It's expensive, man. Paul says, your whole self. Why? Because it makes sense.